I've had my backwards alternator on the engine for quite a while, and I've even tested the backwards running of an alternator just to see that it does actually produce 12 volts in the right direction. I did that on the bench with a different one actually, but I think that's good enough. What I've never had up to now though is a fan belt or alternator belt or serpentine belt, which actually fits everything that I want to have on the engine, including the air conditioning compressor down here. Now this is a very tight fit, and so it's a kind of slightly provisional, although it has been on the engine in the engine bay before. But the thing that is quite different from the original S-type installation is the alternator obviously is not down here, and the water pump is not up here. Now the water pump will actually be electrical externally plumbed in. So all that remained was to have the correct belt on the system to make it all run. But believe me, there is a large number of possible combinations of ways of routing this belt around the various pulleys and so on. And in fact I even at one point had additional idler pulleys and so on mounted on here, which is why you might be seeing this prototype bracket with a couple of holes which actually weren't needed in the end. And to get the tensioner was one of the last elements to get connected up properly. Now I could have made do with a sort of traditional screw type tensioner, but having one with a spring in it like this actually is quite useful. So how did I go about, and how will I go about selecting the right belt? Well, the first thing I did was to have a spare belt which I had knocking around from when I looked at this ages and ages ago. It was way too long, and I've cut it with some sharp cutters and got it connected up into position. So how did I even arrive here? Well, this is how you adjust the tensioner, or not adjust the tensioner, how you fit the tensioner. With it's quite a strong force on there actually. Whilst messing around with the belt here, as you can see, I have actually got a couple of bolts through it to join the halves together. So I had to have the tensioner depressed, as it were, while I worked on that. And for that, I used a one of these clamp things, which I think I used mainly for woodworking activities, which, as you can see, I'm able to provide a permanent deflection to the tensioner. That also demonstrates how much spare movement that has actually got left in it. So that's how I devised the routing. So it goes round all the pulleys. So the important ones are the crankshaft pulley, which does the majority of the work, the AC compressor and the alternator, and they have to wrap around whichever pulley by a significant amount. It's no use having one that kind of skirts the edge of a pulley and then hardly touches it at all. In fact, I had to check that this one has kind of from where it touches the pulley to it comes off the pulley, it was at 270 or maybe a bit less degrees of contact, and that is actually the same as it was on the original S-type, so that's okay. The crankshaft is touching from about here to about here, so that's a huge amount. So yeah, what am I saying? So this is around about 270, and this is about, I don't know, 180, maybe a bit less. And the alternator pulley, you won't be able to see this, but it's even more, well, yeah, it's probably about the same actually, looking at it. So something like 270, 280 degrees of contact, so that provides the pulley with quite a lot of grip, so that it can drive everything round. Now, clearly, using a couple of bolts in here won't be sufficient in real life, so what I now need to do is to find a belt that I can actually use properly, and so I need to get this one off and have a look at it. I don't need that on there at the moment. Okay. So, here is my belt, which I need to get one which is without any joins in it. So now I've got this obviously the holes, but I've also marked the approximate length. Assuming the belt here is continuous, it needs to run from about here round to the other side. So the end of the belt there, and that would be the other end of the same belt, obviously without a cut and join in it. So what I need to do now is measure the length of the belt. So I'll just take the screws out for a minute. Okay. Alright, so originally this belt had the number 2625 on it, and that is the length. Now I've already cut this piece off actually, so originally it went round to there. So I'm now going to just prove my point here and measure the total length of this belt. Okay, so let's see how accurate this belt length actually is. I'm just comparing the cut ends. That looks like that matches. Does it match at this end? Yes. No, it's come out shorter than I expected to. Let's measure it again. Okay, so I've now got 2.615. Okay, that is tiny bit shorter than I expected it to be, but there's a bit of inaccuracy in measuring this stuff because it's bendy and so on. So, right, I'm going to stick with the theory. So 2.625 is the nominal length of this belt, at least it was before I cut it. And now I've cut it, of course, it's now shorter. And my objective belt needs to line up where these somewhere around. There's actually two lines joined by, I don't know why I put that in the middle, it's a bit like an H. But anyway, if I measure from here to somewhere here, then I'll see what belts are actually available, whatever length that actually is. Fortunately, the tensioner does actually provide a certain amount of flexibility with regard to the selection. Doing my best to stretch the rubber out. Okay. I'm getting 1.89 or 1.9 even up to the mark. 1.88, 1.89. So that's the belt. I need to order 1.890 or something, and I shall now see what belt is actually available. I'm just measuring this again, just for extra confidence. And one thing I will say, don't bother trying to measure a belt without cutting it, because you will have a huge error. And I'm looking at it now and it's looking more like 1.9 metres, maybe even 1.91. So I already discovered a 1.89, but I might just look and see if I can find one a tiny bit longer. Fortunately, the tensioner allows for a lot of adjustment because it moves quite a long way. And while I'm at it, I will just mention, as I said before, I think there's a number of combinations you could use here. but one of the most crucial is that the tensioner actually does tension. So I had one option before that went round here, up here, down the other side, and round here. But that's no good at all, because when you alter the angle of the tensioner, it doesn't actually alter the length of the belt at all. So that, for that reason, it has to go round here, around here, and then back up here, incorporating the crankshaft pulley on one side only. So yeah, up and over is no good, but around and back is okay. Anyway, so 1.91 may be the size I'm looking for now. I'm just going to reiterate why I've got this set up as it is, and this does mean the alternator runs backwards. Obviously the space inside the Gilbern is pretty restricted, and for that reason having the alternator down here was a real problem. So where did I get the idea to mount the thing backwards like this? Well, in the original S-Type, this is approximately where the water pump used to go, which is also not built into the block and is kind of running, as it were, backwards in exactly the same configuration as this. So yeah, that's where I got the idea from. And an alternator, well, it generates AC. It goes between positive and negative and positive repeatedly, and the reason it comes out with positive on the output there is because of a rectifier, bridge rectifier inside, which ensures that the positive always comes out of the same terminal. So that's the beauty of AC, that's the beauty of rectifiers. So these alternators don't care which way round they run. They will still put out 12 volts from the correct place. And alternators being pretty much a universal type of appliance, and you may or may not know that Honda cars typically have their engines the other way round and actually rotate the opposite way round to most other cars, and presumably they don't have a special Honda version of the alternator. They just use the same generic types as everybody else does. So again, proving that a backwards running alternator should not be a problem. So here we are. So we have the alternator where the water pump used to be, nothing where the alternator used to be, empty space for the steering shaft down here, and the water pump will be external and it will be electrically powered, and that appears to be pretty optimum. My nice new 1900 centimetre, 1.9 metre drive belt has arrived to replace this construction with the join in it. So this will be the proof of the pudding, if you like. Right, so I need to take this bolt out in order to fit it. It's a pretty simple thing. Take the slack off. That could have been interesting. Right, okay. So that's my jury-rigged belt with a join in, which should be about the same length as this brand new one without a join in it. Well, it looks pretty promising. Let's try it out. Okay, I had to recharge the camera a bit, so yeah, got it round the alternator. And the crankshaft pulley. Do I remember how I had it? No, I don't remember how I had it. Oh no. No, so that was wrong, wasn't it? That's one of the problems. Exactly how many different combinations are there? And the answer is loads! How did I have it? I specifically said that don't go up and down the tensioner. So, loot. I'm going to have to refer to my previous video to find out how I routed this thing. Aha, I think I'm getting closer to it. Oh, this is why these diagrams that you get in manuals and so on are such a good idea. But of course there is no such diagram for this setup. As far as I know, nobody else has done this. Of course, when you've got a cut belt, you can put it in any order you want. But not so here. Ah, done it! Yay! And I have just noticed that there's a little indicator just here with a pointer, and I think this is indicating the amount of tension, which means that I could have more. I can't do that easily without tipping the engine over, but I think you can see this little pointer is actually moving as I lift it, which means that this is right on the one end of the range, so it could easily have more tension. So perhaps I could have had a shorter belt, but whatever. We now have a fitted serpentine belt in a completely non-standard manner. I've even swapped over this pulley here. I thought I'd allow myself a little bit of extra clearance for the coolant pipes there. So I've swapped this over from a ridged pulley to a smooth one like that. And there we are. So the alternator is fitted backwards, as I keep saying. There's plenty of grip range from there to there on the crankshaft pulley. A similar amount on the alternator pulley. Relatively little down here on the air conditioning pump. But it seems to be similar to how it's shown in other diagrams I've seen. The things that are missing are, well, normally the alternator would be down here, which it clearly isn't. Or if it was on an X-type engine, the alternator is actually over here, which it also isn't either. So as far as I know, this is a unique setup, and it was devised by cutting this belt, joining it together, and then measuring from the cut end right round to the where the mark is, to work out how long it needs to be. And useful to have a spare belt, which I don't know why I've got it actually, to use as a kind of template. You could use string or something, but I've got a feeling that would produce a lot of inaccuracy, because this stuff is under a lot of spring loading and the stretch, I think, is quite significant. So yeah, I think I'd recommend having a spare belt that's far too long, which you can use to model, if you like, what is required. So that all looks pretty satisfactory. So another sub project is finished.